Remember the night you said I love you. Remember you vowed by all the stars above you.
South of the border, down Mexico way. That's where I fell in love when the stars above came out to play. And now as I wander, my thoughts ever stray. South of the border, down Mexico way.
I am deceased. With the resultant consequence that there's been a considerable change in my lifestyle. I've never enjoyed much of a day's illness in my life, so this little setback came as much of a surprise to me as it did to Beryl, my good wife. Beryl had always had her heart set on the Woman's Weekly World Discovery Tour. But she kept putting it off. I think deep down, she must have known a tragedy like this was on the cards. She was always on and on at me to tag along with her too, but I never had the lust to wander. I never saw much point in dragging myself up and down the Leaning Tower of Eiffel. I always thought I'd seen as much of the world as I wanted to after a little run down to Rosebud. Or a spin up to the Dandies on a Sunday afternoon to pick up a couple of shrubs. And look what happened to old Cliff Jennings. His wife was on and on at him to take the big trip. He took the big trip. Massive coronary occlusion in the middle of the changing of the colour. Poor old beggar keeled over, a brand new Nikon hit the deck too. Zoom lens, in-camera sound system, the works. They were both a total write-off. The upshot of it was I had to fly old Cliff's mortal remains back to Australia, first class on Qantas, and the poor old beggar couldn't even avail himself of the free in-flight beverages. Well, that's not my idea of a holiday. But it got to the point where I was getting very, very worried about Beryl. She was looking very peaky, and her polyp was playing up. Beryl's always had a big polyp problem. She's seen the top polyp man, seen one polyp man after another. She even toyed with the idea of a polypectomy. I thought the sea breeze on the Jumbo would do her the world of good. She finally made up her mind. She jumped me from behind a rhododendron. I was in the garden giving the silver birch a drink when she leapt out waving a Woman's Weekly. She said, I'm going, I'm actually going. And she went. I had plenty to do on the home front to keep me out of mischief, what with the garden and the laundry, and nipping down to the shops to do the occasional messages, and topping up the bird bath, putting a little blanket over the budgie's cage, checking his cuttlefish, keeping the home lived in, viewing the Don Lane show, and departing this life. A pretty tight itinerary, even by Woman's Weekly standards. Beryl was on her Scandinavian leg when she got the tragic telegram from Gwen Longmire about my decease. I wrecked Helsinki for Beryl. If ever a man ruined Scandinavia for a loved one, it was me. And she could have got her death rushing out of that sauna as quick as she did. But I'll never forget the day my little widow came home, as long as... I'll never forget the day Beryl came home. I heard her key in the Yale. Saw a shadow on the front porch through the reeded, rippled glass. Then she came, she plonked down the suitcases when she straightened up her little face, white as a sheet with a mixture of bereavement and jet lag. Of course, there she was in the house that we had shared for all those years together. She had one thing on her mind and one thing only. Cup of tea. Well, she shot down the passage, turned left into the kitchen. She stood like a statue in the kitchen door because there it was. She couldn't miss it in the kitchen. In the sink, too, under the dripping tap. My last Milo mug. Still with a little bit of Milo skin hanging over the side. And there were a few peas in the sink, too, that I hadn't managed to push down the grating. Still green, too. Me gone, them green. Still, she was at the end of her tether, and she took a couple of Valiums, as prescribed by Dr. Hamilton for a period of bereavement. And then, well, she hopped into our nuptial cot for a bit of well-deserved shut-eye. As luck would have it, the ever-thoughtful Valda Clissold had changed my sheets. Not that I'd disgrace myself on the occasion of my passing, which is a lot more than I can say for old Ray Stassinopoulos. He lives at 52 Gallipoli Crescent. Old Ray, well, he had his third stroke, the big one, the biggie. And it was a beauty. Right in the middle of Are You Being Served? And a brand new avocado shag pile carpet. He really blotted his copy. Of course, the family have had a rug over the spot ever since. Well, you couldn't hide a thing that size with a bit of furniture and, well, 3 enormous couches that look a bit silly in the middle of that. But old Ray always had a very dry sense of humour, and I bet every time his little widow Althea trips over that rug, he wheezes himself laughing. In the days prior to and immediately preceding my internment, Beryl was like a human dynamo, up to her eyes in paperwork, putting a rocket under the solicitor and attending to my estate. Beryl and I are without issue to date. So she is my sole executrix. She didn't skimp on my insertion either. If ever a man had a lovely long insertion from his wife, it was me. Oh, yes. Stone. Alexander Horace. Sandy. On April the 7th, devoted son of Horace, deceased, and Enid, née Cockburn, deceased. Beloved brother of Hector, deceased. Lance, deceased. Lorna, deceased. Phyllis, deceased. And Muriel, Western Australia. Much loved husband of Beryl Eileen, née Pizzy, formerly of Cooey Rup. At his residence, alone, suddenly. Brief service, 9:30 a.m, April the 14th, Springvale Necropolis. Family only, please. Family only, please, in lieu of... Family only, please. In lieu of flowers, kindly remember the Holy Trinity Ladies Auxiliary Jazz Ballet Stereo System Appeal. Memories of you I will always keep. God saw you were tired and put you to sleep. Needless to say, there wasn't much of a turn-up at the funeral. Beryl must have a bit of Scotch blood in her because she got a few quotes on me first. She put out tenders. In the end, she settled for a very reasonable little local firm of funeral directors. Nice vehicle, burgundy, power steering. Though I think they could have hoovered out the back seat. My poor little widow had to go all the way out there to the crematorium, up to her ankles in confetti. Blessed ethnic driver, too. Well, you don't want a Greek at the wheel on your last trip. They don't go at the reverential pace we're used to. 40 miles an hour through 2 amber lights and a cripple's crossing. I mean, I wasn't so worried for myself, naturally. But if Beryl hadn't had a seatbelt on, it could have been a double event. She's a marvellous person, though, Beryl. I mean, there she was, sitting up in the cortege like Lady Muck, a plate full, a cup of grief overflowing. She still had the presence of mind to get the driver to pull over outside our local jeweller's shop so she could drop off my watch to get the wrist strap shortened. Not many women would have thought of that. Well, in accordance with Beryl's tasteful request, there weren't too many out there to see me off. There was, in fact, only Beryl and me up to a point, and Thelma Bullock and the Longmires and old Miss Warner and the Nettleton couple without their kiddies, naturally, and Valda, bless her heart, dear Valda Clissold, who was, terribly upset. Underneath, in all probability. And Nurse Young Husband, and Greg Young Husband, Nurse Young Husband's young husband. And there were 3, terribly upset people at the back of the chapel. I've never seen 3 more distressed people in my life. It turned out they were waiting for the 9:45 service. Still, it was nice of them to put their heads round the corner. They weren't called upon so to do. By and large, though, I'm very glad I crossed the great divide in my sleep. I'd never wanted to end up in a hospital or a nursing home or a twilight home or a sunset facility. Or cottages for the elderly, or motel-style accommodation for the bewildered, smelling of chloroform and Brussels sprouts, with a button on the wall you're supposed to fall against. It rings in the matron's office when she's out. They all smell they smell of gravy in the grave, death and roast dinners. You go to one of these places to see a loved one, you know they're not coming out because the sisters tipped you the wink. So you're sitting on the edge of the bed, trying not to eat their grapes. You say, those grapes, they're for you. All right, well, just one. You leave them with a few tweaks. And you're looking down at them, wondering if they know you know. And they're looking up at you, wondering if you know they know you know. They know you know. And you say to them, you're looking marvellous. You'll be out soon. There'll be no holding you back. You'll be like a wagon load of monkeys. We've kept your lovely room just as you left it. Well, you've let it to an Asian student. You don't tell them that. Andy's bringing his family out next week. But if it's a public hospital, you're in a ward, count down about 5 or 6 or 7 beds. there's always an old bloke lying there, flat on his back with his mouth open. The funny thing is, it's always the same old bloke. No, I think he's a plant. I think he's put there by some organisation. Renter stiff, something. I mean, he's the one they say never gets a visitor. He'll get a visitor, all right. He'll get the one we all get when the screens go round our beds for the last time. The one who doesn't bring a box of sanitarium crystallised fruit, but he does bring a box. That punctual old visitor who pops in us all. Anyway, when you're sitting on the edge of the bed of someone you've known all your life and they're running out of breath and why, you're running out of things to say to them. Nature times it nicely. And you wait till they drop off. You sneak a look at your watch. And they see you. They think you're timing them, but all you can smell is roast pork and crackling and applesauce and pumpkin and crunchy roast potatoes and parsnip, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower cheese, apple crumble, ice cream and custard being wheeled up and down the hospital corridors. You can't be grief-stricken with your mouth watering. Oh. But when the curtains closed on my casket, when the music stopped and they'd unscrewed my brass handles, we all came back here to Kiora Gallipoli Crescent. All of us. For a cup of tea, a glass of sherry for those who partook, and a slice of scrumptious quiche that Beryl had the foresight to order from a spotlessly clean Danish couple who started up a gold mine near us. And never being one, to dawdle, always wanting to strike while the iron is hot, Beryl then and there ushered them all into the bedroom, laughing and chatting with their drinks and savouries in their hands. She flung open my end of our walnut veneer wardrobe and gave them all first go at my personal effects. Well, you should have seen them. They were like flies round a honey pot. I've never been so popular at all. I've never been so popular. But after a lot of humming and hawing, they all took their leave, empty-handed. Oh, the kiddies had a few dress-ups, and my ties are going to see years of wear. Tying back some of Beryl's tomato plants. My shirts will, have a long life as dusters. And my Jim Jams will see years of wear and service in the glove box of Beryl's new yellow Mazda. Well, after she'd farewelled my mourners, Beryl put her feet up and suddenly who should stick his head round the corner but Clary Lockwood from 43 Gallipoli Crescent. He plonked himself in the Jason recliner. He polished off the penfolds and proceeded to overdo the condolences. He's a cheeky beggar. He's got more front on him than Myers. But Beryl soon had his number. He wanted to collar my bowling equipment. But he added the gracious proviso. He only wanted it if Beryl was 100% sure I had no further use for it. But she had him working in no time. She had him huffing and puffing round the house, ripping stuff out of cupboards, tearing garments off clothes, coat hangers, and out the back. He was pretty soon starting up the incinerator. I've got a little workshop at the back of the... I had a little workshop at the back of the garage with a beautiful set of tools, all in good nick. For years, I'd been making a little dolly's chest of drawers in polished Queensland maple. Beautiful little thing. I must have started that, donkeys years ago. About the time Beryl and I... Well, before we saw that specialist. What a lovely chap he was too. Return man. Anyway, I kept on making this little bit of Dolly's furniture. I thought I'd give it to my little goddaughter, little Marilyn Nettleton. My little sunbeam. My little daffodil, I used to call you, didn't I? But it's the time I've helped you up onto the tram with your lunchbox. But I haven't seen her for a year or two, not for about 18 years. She's at uni now, I hear, doing third world studies and living with a beatnik from Kuala Lumpur. She wouldn't have much use for Dolly's chest of drawers. But I'd love to have finished it before the Garbos chucked it on the back of their truck. But when you catch the ferry, you're bound to leave something behind on the jetty. Some bit of unfinished business. We all leave undone those things which we ought to have done. But there is one thing I wish I had achieved before I handed in my marbles and jumped the twig. I could have done it. I wanted to do it. It was there to be done. Every day I'd wake up and I'd think, I'm going to do it today. Today is the day I'm going to do it. It was a little ambition of mine. I'd wake up and I'd have the best intentions in the world and something would crop up, some blessed thing had happened, and you'd put it off, and procrastination is a thief of time, and in the end I didn't blessed well do it. Defrost the fridge. I was going to do it. I was planning to do it the day I passed away, as a matter of fact. That was some funny old day. Something's made that day stick in my memory. I went down to the shops, down the junction, in point of fact, and I bought a crayfish from that little bloke with the water running down his window. I've always been partial to a nice bit of cray, and I got it home and I didn't put it in the fridge. I left it on the kitchen table to thaw on the Laminex work surface. Fate moves in a mysterious way, because if it hadn't been for that blessed crustacean sitting there in the middle of the kitchen table all over the long weekend in the blazing sun, the next door neighbours might never have broken in and found me. Well, now I'm more or less permanently housebound. And you know, I see more of Beryl now than I did in the old days before it happened. The only time I don't see Beryl is when she goes out to the garden of rest to see me. I don't know how long she'll keep that up. It's a long haul out there to the necropolis to view my niche. And I put my urn so high up the wall you'd need a blessed extension ladder to pay your respects. Beryl's talking about selling up, moving to a townhouse at Noosa. I'll miss her. We do miss people. But Beryl needs a holiday after the terrible shock that I gave her.
Sandy Stone will be back next Monday night at 9:30. And there's even more comedy tomorrow with Wendy Harmer, Gene Kitson, Phil Scott and more of Australia's most original comics in The Big Gig, live from Melbourne. That's tomorrow night at 9:30. Stay with us now for The Road to Wembley.